Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. He'll never be half the man my ex was. She whispered to my sister. She didn't know I was standing right there. Not until the silence behind her turned sharp. I didn't say anything. Didn't clear my throat. Didn't make a sound. Just stood there, in the hallway, frozen. And listened. Her voice was low. Too low for confidence, too loud for shame. I pretend. A lot, she said. I try to be happy. But I miss passion. Real passion. He's safe. But he's not like my ex. She laughed. Soft. Bittersweet. Like she was mourning something she'd given up voluntarily. My sister didn't respond right away. I didn't wait to hear if she ever did. I turned. Walked back down the hall. Out the back door. Down the steps. The night was cold. But not as cold as what I felt inside. It wasn't a shock. That's what stayed with me. It wasn't surprise or heartbreak. It was confirmation. I'd felt it for months. The distance. The strain. I just never thought she'd say it out loud. Not in our house. Not to my sister. That was the part that twisted. I sat in the car for an hour. Didn't drive anywhere. Just sat. Hands on the steering wheel. Breathing in slow. Letting it all settle. Not anger. Not pain. Just a shift. Like something inside me changed positions. And once it did, I knew I wouldn't move it back. I came back in through the garage. She was upstairs already. Lights off. I didn't ask questions. Didn't bring it up. Didn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd drawn blood. I showered. Got in bed. Turned away from her. She shifted a little, like she expected something, a kiss, a word, a breath. She got none of it. Because something had broken. And not the usual kind of break, not a crack or a tear or a fight. This was structural. Foundational. The kind of break you don't fix. You bulldoze. I didn't tell her I heard. I didn't need to. Because I knew that eventually she'd feel it. Not in a scream. Not in a confrontation. But in the way I started to vanish. One quiet, calculated breath at a time. Tomorrow, she'd wake up next to the same man. But he wouldn't be the same. And she wouldn't even notice. Not yet. But soon. Very soon. She'd understand what it means to live with someone who's already gone. The next morning, she moved through the house like nothing had happened. Coffee brewing. Music playing. That same careless hum in her voice as she folded laundry in the living room. She didn't see it. Not the way I looked at her. Not the way I moved, quieter, sharper. She didn't feel the weight shift in the room. Because for her, that conversation the night before was already gone. But I was still in it. Still standing in that hallway, hearing her rewrite our story to someone who should have never been her audience. I didn't speak much that day. Didn't ask how she slept. Didn't offer to help with the dishes. I just started withdrawing. Not loudly. Not cruelly. Just enough. The first thing I did was take down the photo in the hallway. The one from our trip to Savannah. Sunset behind us. Her laughing, hand in mine. I replaced it with a blank frame. Literally. Empty. She passed it twice that afternoon. Didn't say a word. That told me everything. Next, I logged into our joint accounts. Turned off the auto-pay on her subscriptions. Small ones, Spotify, her monthly yoga app, her skincare box. Ones she wouldn't notice right away. I wasn't punishing her. I was erasing my side of the contract. That night, she asked if we should visit her parents next weekend. Said her mom was planning dinner. Said it would be good for us. I told her I had work. Didn't apologize. Didn't elaborate. She looked confused. A little hurt. But not enough to ask why. And that's how I knew she still didn't feel the fracture. Not really. She thought this was distance. A rough patch. Something we'd coast through, like always. But this wasn't coasting. This was the start of a quiet demolition. The next day, I cleared my calendar. Deleted reminders about her doctor's appointment. Turned off shared notes for grocery runs. Unlinked our calendars. One by one, I began removing myself from the web of us. And still, she didn't ask. She kissed me goodbye before work like she always did. I let her. But I didn't kiss back. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to disappear without causing a scene. That's the thing no one talks about. You don't have to leave in rage. You can leave in silence. And when you do, it cuts deeper. Because there's nothing for them to fight against. Nothing to fix. Just a growing emptiness where you used to be. By Friday, I had started sleeping on the edge of the bed. By Sunday, I stopped wearing my wedding ring around the house. She noticed that one. Her eyes flicked to my hand as I passed her in the hallway. She opened her mouth, closed it again. No questions. And that was her mistake. Because the thing about silence is, you don't hear it until it's everywhere. And by the time she noticed mine, it would already be too late. There's a specific kind of silence that builds over time. Not from neglect, not from anger, but from realization. I didn't slam doors, didn't pack a bag, didn't even sleep on the couch. But I stopped being in the room. I was still there, just not with her. I showed up at work earlier than usual, came home later, ate dinner without comment, cleared my plate, and disappeared into the spare room under the excuse of needing to finish something: taxes, documents, reading. She never questioned it out loud, but I felt her watching, waiting for the storm she thought was coming. But the real damage doesn't come with thunder. It comes with nothing at all. That week, I took down more photos. One she probably hadn't looked at in months, us on the pier, laughing at something she doesn't even remember anymore. I didn't throw them away, just put them in a box, sealed it, and slid it into the back of the closet. She saw the empty wall. Her hand hovered over it once, like she might ask. She didn't. The next day, I turned off notifications from our shared delivery app. No more pings when she ordered something. No more updates on what we needed. I wasn't part of that we anymore. That weekend, she asked if I'd go with her to dinner with her college friends. Said it had been months, that they missed us. I told her to go ahead. Said I needed rest. She hesitated, stood in the doorway longer than needed, then left without another word. And I watched her walk to the car, dressed up, hair done, eyes scanning her phone like the night ahead would prove something to someone. But not to me. I turned off the porch light before she pulled out of the driveway. Inside, I sat in the dark, hands folded. Not sad. Not bitter. Just clear. I started rerouting mail the next day. Not all of it, just the important things. Financials, legal docs, medical updates, to the new address I hadn't told her about yet. I wasn't moving. Not yet. But I needed to know I could. And that thought brought a calm I hadn't felt in years. She came home that night late. Smelled like hotel bar cologne and sugary perfume. Tried to be casual. Said traffic was bad. That drinks went longer than planned. I didn't ask. Didn't press. She didn't offer more. She changed in the bathroom. Brushed her teeth with the door closed. Slipped into bed next to me, careful not to touch. She thought she was hiding something. But she didn't realize. I had already stopped looking. Because what hurts more than knowing someone's keeping secrets is realizing you no longer care what they are. She turned away from me that night. But the real turn had already happened. Days ago. Quietly. Without announcement. She just hadn't felt it yet. But soon she would. And when she did, it wouldn't be because I left. It would be because she'd finally noticed. I was already gone. She said it on a Sunday morning. Soft, almost uncertain, like she was afraid of her own words. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. You've changed, she whispered across the kitchen island. I didn't look up from the paper. Because I had. That was the point. She stood there in a robe I'd bought her last Christmas. Hair tied back, no makeup, trying to look casual, like nothing had shifted. But everything had. She was cooking breakfast. Something she hadn't done in weeks, maybe months. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, all my favorites. Laid out like a peace offering I never asked for. I thanked her. Politely. With the same tone I'd use for a stranger holding the elevator. And that's when she really saw it. Not in my words. In my absence. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I wasn't even trying to protect myself anymore. I was just existing. And for someone who'd grown used to being the center of my orbit, that was the worst thing I could do, remove gravity. She cleared her throat, tried to smile. Asked if I wanted to watch something together later. That new series I'd mentioned once in passing. I said I had plans. Didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. Because what do you say to someone who used to know your schedule down to the hour, but now couldn't tell if you were still hers? She asked if I wanted to go out next weekend. A drive. A little getaway. Just us, she said. I nodded, took a sip of coffee, and said I'd let her know. But we both understood. There was no us to take anywhere. That evening, I took the last framed photo of us down from the hallway. It had survived the first wave of removal, not because I'd forgotten it, but because I wasn't ready. Now I was. I didn't hide it. Just placed it face down in the drawer near my desk. The drawer with spare keys and receipts and chargers I hadn't used in years. That's where we belonged now. She found it the next day. Didn't say anything, but I noticed her glance at the wall as she walked by. A flicker of recognition. Or maybe resignation. She was trying harder now. Leaving little notes. cooking more often, asking how my day was genuinely. But it wasn't connection. It was damage control. It was someone trying to revive a version of herself that I had already grieved. And when she said it again, "You've changed," I finally met her eyes. "No," I said quietly. "I just stopped pretending." She blinked. Once. Slowly. That silence afterward. It wasn't shocked, or hurt, or angry. It was realization. The man standing in front of her wasn't cold, wasn't cruel, wasn't even distant. He was simply finished. She stood in the kitchen for a long time after I walked out, holding the edge of the counter like it could steady her. But nothing steadies you when you finally understand. The person you once ignored is now the version of themselves that no longer includes you. And you don't get to ask them to come back. Because they didn't leave. They just stopped waiting to be seen. There's something dangerous about memory. How it only brings back the parts you want to feel again. She remembered smiles, vacations, the comfort. But she forgot who stood beside her when everything cracked. She forgot the man who stayed when she lost her job and spent 6 months spiraling through self-help books and yoga phases and mood swings she blamed on finding herself. She forgot the man who filled out her job applications when she was too overwhelmed to try, who cooked dinner while she sat in silence, who covered rent the entire year she needed space to realign. She forgot the way I shut down parts of myself just to hold space for her chaos. All of that, traded in a heartbeat. For the ghost of a man she used to sleep with years before she even met me. I used to think she was just being honest that night, whispering to my sister that I wasn't like her ex, that she missed the passion, that she was pretending in our marriage. But I realized something darker. She wasn't confessing. She was fantasizing. That wasn't a breakdown. It was nostalgia, dressed as honesty. She wanted the drama, the chaos, the thrill of being desired recklessly. And I was steady. Too steady. The kind of man who makes sure there's gas in the car before a trip, who remembers to buy batteries before the remote dies. The man who turns off lights in rooms she leaves empty. Boring, right? Until the foundation shakes. Until someone gets sick. Until the real world kicks in and stability becomes sexier than swagger. But by then, they've already thrown the anchor overboard. And wonder why they're drifting. She said once, early in our marriage, "You make me feel safe." But safety gets mistaken for simplicity. And simplicity? It's not loud enough to compete with fantasy. I remembered all this as I sat in the garage that evening, scrolling through emails on my phone, watching the light under the kitchen door spill across the floor. She was inside, making dinner again, trying. But I had started keeping score, not out of pettiness, but precision. All the times I showed up. All the times I filled the space with love while she offered only presence. All the versions of me I sacrificed so she could figure it out. It added up. And now she could feel it. The quiet wasn't passive anymore. It was deliberate. Focused. Because I had one final thing left to take back. My narrative. No more being the man who just endured. No more being the one she measured against ghosts. I wasn't angry. I was awake. And that's something far more dangerous than rage. Because rage fades. But clarity? Clarity writes the exit plan. She asked it late. Too late. It was a Tuesday night, around 10. The kids were asleep. Dishes done. That hum of artificial calm hung in the air, the kind that only exists when two people are pretending not to drown. She stood by the doorway, arms folded, like that posture could protect her from the answer. "Do you still love me?" she said. Her voice didn't shake. It wasn't brave. It was calculated. Like a chess piece hoping the game wasn't over yet. I didn't look up. I just let the question hover. Let it burn through the air between us. Because that wasn't a question. That was a trap. What she meant was, do you still love me enough to pretend nothing happened? Because the moment you ask that kind of question, you already know the answer. The truth is love never disappeared. It was worn out, peeled off in layers. Slowly, silently. Every time I was compared to someone who didn't have to carry the weight I did. She used to tell me I was too quiet, that I kept too much in. But now she was realizing that quiet men, they don't explode. They exit. And when we go quiet long enough, it isn't to punish. It's to prepare. I thought about the version of me she used to get. The one who rubbed her back while she cried over jobs she didn't want. Who ran errands on his only day off, just to keep things smooth. Who learned to cook because she said she was too tired to care. That man still lived inside me, but not for her anymore. Now that man was saving himself. For the next chapter. For peace. She waited. Still standing. still hoping the silence would turn to reassurance. But I gave her what she gave me all those months. Nothing. The next morning, she made breakfast. Eggs, toast, orange juice, like we were still a couple. Like a few warm yolks could uncrack the foundation she shattered. I thanked her. Not coldly, not warmly, just neutrally. And that tone? That hit harder than silence. Because she was used to noise. To begging, crying, fighting. She knew how to argue with flames. But frost? Frost you can't scream at. It just surrounds you. Until you can't feel your own pulse anymore. I noticed her start to panic. Not visibly, she was still too proud for that. But I saw it in the way she lingered in rooms a little longer. In how she laughed too hard at things that weren't funny. In the way she touched my shoulder when she didn't need to. Like proximity could replace connection. But it couldn't. Not anymore. Because the man she was trying to reach? He had already left the room. Left the house. Left her. She just hadn't noticed he packed light. No suitcase. No announcement. Just a new password. A new plan. And a heart that no longer made space for apologies shaped like questions. It was my sister who finally said it out loud. Not me. Not her. My sister. She was over on a Saturday. We were sitting on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the world pass like we weren't part of it anymore. The kids were inside, cartoons playing. My wife was in the kitchen, pretending to cook, pretending we were still a family. My sister leaned back in her chair, looked at me carefully, not like a sibling, but like someone checking for damage under the hood. Then she asked, "Do you even love her anymore?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I finally did. I said nothing. Just stared at the neighbor's dog chasing birds it would never catch. She sipped her coffee, then said it. I heard what she said. That night, she didn't know I was in the hallway. But I did. I heard her. I closed my eyes for a second. She said you were boring. That she misses the passion. That you're not like her ex. She wasn't trying to hurt me. Just name what was already bleeding. And then she added, "You knew, didn't you?" Maybe not the words, but the truth. I nodded. She asked if I was staying for the kids. I nodded again. Then she said the one thing no one else had dared. "She doesn't deserve you." Not a dramatic line. Not some emotional validation. Just an observation. Like stating the weather. But it hit harder than anything my wife had ever said. Because for the first time in this whole slow collapse, I felt seen. I didn't cry. Didn't explain. Didn't unload years of frustration onto someone else's shoulders. I just breathed. Later that night, when the kids were asleep and the house dimmed down to shadows, I walked into the guest room. That's where I slept now. By choice. She was standing by the bedroom door, arms crossed. She asked if I was really going to sleep there again. I didn't answer. She said she missed me. That she was trying. Still no reply. She started getting louder, not yelling, but that controlled panic, the kind that tastes like regret when it's too late. She said she didn't understand what happened. That things used to be good. I looked at her then. Not with anger. Just clarity. Things weren't good. They were quiet. And quiet wasn't peace. It was suppression. Suppression of every time I sat through her praise of another man. Every night she climbed into bed with me but thought of someone else. Every moment she looked at what we built and asked herself what it was missing, instead of asking what it cost. She wanted the fire back, but didn't understand that you don't get to ask for warmth after pouring water on the flame. I slept in the guest room that night. And when I closed the door, I realized. She wasn't losing me. She already had. Now she was just learning how to sit in the quiet she'd created. And I was learning how good it felt not to save her from it. I didn't scream. Didn't accuse. Didn't threaten. I calculated. That Monday, I opened a private checking account. Tuesday, I changed my payroll deposit. Wednesday, I closed the shared cloud account she never used but always had access to. It wasn't revenge. It was separation. Separation of finances. Separation of roles. Separation of illusions. She noticed something was off when the joint grocery card declined at checkout. Texted me that afternoon asking if there was a bank issue. I replied, "No issue." That was it. She stopped by my office door later that evening, the one I'd moved to the far side of the house. Asked if we were okay. I said we were functional. That seemed to unsettle her more than a fight ever would. I had already begun untangling the shared threads of our life. I wasn't burning the bridge. Just building a new one she wouldn't cross. I started working late. Stopped announcing where I was going. Not to hide anything, but because I owed her nothing now. She asked about a family trip we had planned for the fall. I said I'd let her know. I wouldn't. She asked if we were still seeing her parents next month. I told her she should go alone. She said they'd ask questions. I said she's good at pretending. The silence between us had evolved. It wasn't tension anymore. It was a verdict. She started trying harder, making my favorite meals. Leaving the kitchen spotless like that would erase everything she'd said with her eyes and her silence all those months before. She wasn't changing out of guilt. She was performing out of fear. Fear that I was already too far gone to drag back. She was right. That weekend, she found me folding laundry in the guest room. She leaned on the doorframe like we were still married in all the ways that mattered. She asked, "Are we separating?" I didn't look up, didn't pause. I just said, "We already did. You just missed it." That was the moment the last curtain fell. Because she realized this wasn't a phase. This wasn't a power play. This was the consequence of years of quiet neglect. You don't lose someone all at once. You lose them by inches, by size, by silence, by every time you make them feel like they're not enough. And when they finally step back, it's not to hurt you. It's because they've realized you were never really holding them. Only the version of them that kept showing up to prove something. I stopped proving, stopped showing up. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. And she was only just now feeling what that kind of absence really costs. By the next week, she was unraveling. But not in chaos. In calculation. She started leaving reminders of us around the house. Old photos back on the mantle. Our anniversary playlist drifting softly from the living room speaker. A mug I bought her years ago mysteriously reappeared on the kitchen counter. She wasn't mourning. She was negotiating. Trying to rebuild something she'd already bulldozed. She asked if I wanted to go for a walk. Said we could talk. I nodded. Let her speak. She stumbled through apologies, vague admissions. Said things like, "I didn't mean for it to sound like that. And you know I love you, right?" I said nothing. Because what do you say to a woman who only speaks when she's cornered? She had spent months stretching the thread between us thinner and thinner. Now that it snapped, she was trying to braid it back with apologies that came too late. She started texting me again during the day. Not questions, just statements. "Hope your meeting went well. Thinking about you. Dinner's at 7. I didn't respond. Or if I did, it was surgical. Polite. Final. She mistook my calm for cruelty. But this wasn't punishment. This was the boundary she never thought I'd build. One night, I caught a glimpse of her phone on the counter. Her message thread with her sister was open. One message stood out. "I ruined everything. He's slipping through my hands. And he's not even angry. That's what scares me." That was the first honest thing I'd seen from her in months. She finally understood. It's not the man yelling you should fear. It's the one who goes quiet and stays that way. That night, she asked if we could talk again. She started crying before she finished the first sentence. Said she missed me. Said she didn't realize how far apart we'd gotten. Said she didn't know how to fix it. I listened, then stood up. Said I was going to bed. Not to the master bedroom. To the guest room. To the space that had slowly become mine. She stood in the hallway, frozen. Didn't follow. Because she finally felt it. This wasn't an argument. It was a departure. A quiet one. The kind you don't notice until there's nothing left to chase. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to mourn except your own reflection. And even that starts to look like a stranger. I didn't move out. Not physically. Not yet. But she knows I'm no longer here. She feels it in the quiet. In the absence of touch. In the way I walk past her like furniture. I didn't slam the door. Didn't burn anything down. Didn't throw words like knives or leave her with the satisfaction of a final argument. I just stopped being. I still pay the bills. Still show up for the kids. Still sit at the same dinner table. But the man she once loved, or claimed to, he doesn't sit across from her anymore. He left the moment she said he wasn't enough. And the one who stayed? He's a shadow. Quiet. Cold. Watching. I know people would ask, why not just leave? Why not pack a bag and be done? Simple. Because we have children. And they don't deserve the fallout of adult betrayals. Because we built a business. And I won't let her recklessness burn what we both built, even if she abandoned the foundation we stood on. Because not every departure is physical. Sometimes, the most devastating exits happen in silence, when you stop showing up emotionally and let the other person sit in what they created. She still tries sometimes. Leaves the porch light on when I come home late. Asks if I need anything when I pass by. Puts her hand on my arm like muscle memory. But I don't respond. Not cruelly. Not with malice. Just absence. She lives with that now. The weight of a man she dismissed, now standing inches from her, unreachable. There's no yelling, no broken glass, just mornings where she wakes up alone in a shared house. Even the dog stopped sleeping on our bed. I know she tells herself I'll come around, that I'm just processing, that maybe if she waits long enough, the version of me she once twisted around her finger will reappear. But I've already grieved this. And when you grieve someone while they're still alive, there's nothing left to bury when it finally dies. She walks through this house now like a guest. Polite, careful, unsure where she stands. And me? I stand exactly where I chose to be. Still, unapologetic, unmoved. She thought silence was passive, but silence, real silence, is the sound of a man rebuilding without her. And now, every step she takes in this house echoes with the truth she never saw coming. I didn't leave. I disappeared. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.